It's about Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slava Heroyam podcast, episode 2. I'm here with Ben Cook. He's the executive director and co-founder of the Ukraine Assistance Organization, and he also runs one of the top 100 newsletters on Substack. If you're new to this channel, it's only the second episode. Thank you for joining us. How are you today, Ben?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. The difference of this channel that I'm pushing for is to not so much do always the big picture stories of Ukraine, but also kind of get down into the details of the individual heroes and individual stories. And last time we kind of did that through the documentary of that was run by that is directed, by Zarina Zabriskie, which she'll be proud of me for getting it right this time, I think. Let's see. There is a banner I wanted to share. Here we go. Okay. And because last time I figured out how to do a few more tricks. So if you're watching this live or if you're watching a video recording, there's the website where you can go and watch the documentary. I really should. It's first on Human Safari. It's about the history of this town pre-war, during the invasion, and right now where they're facing a drone siege where drones are directly targeting civilians, and the Russians kind of go on social media and brag about it. So I'll leave that up for a minute. But Ben, I wanted to have you on because you've become an expert in drone warfare over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I picked it up out of necessity. I had to figure out what was going on in the war, and Ukraine had to fill in the gaps where Western aid was absent, and that became drones. And so if you wanted to understand what's going on with the war in Ukraine, you had to become somewhat of an expert in unmanned aerial systems.
Right. And just like all the nations of the world are going to have to very quickly become an expert as they're watching this conflict unfold. So I forgot to introduce ourselves a little more. Again, it's only the second time. I am a former air battle manager, E3 AWACS. I've got a model of it back over there in the corner. I was a senior air battle manager, which means I directed aircraft to their targets over Afghanistan and Iraq and those two conflicts. And I've been quite the student of Ukraine, especially the air war, because that's what I would have understood the most. And I plan on telling this story as an author as it develops, or even hopefully one that leads to ultimate victory. Can you give everyone a little bit of background about your relationship with Ukraine? It goes farther back than mine by far.
Yeah, so in 2010, I came to Ukraine to work for a couple of days, and that's all it took. I was in Odessa for a little more than 48 hours. And that was it, my very first trip. And before the war, I was staying 5-6 months at a time in Odessa. I've got a master's degree in international security and conflict studies, and that, with my time in Ukraine, kind of positioned me to generate a level of understanding that I think people craved, because it was very difficult in the early stages to understand where the mainstream media was getting their information from, because it just didn't. A lot of things didn't make sense to me, and so I thought, well, let's jump into this with both feet and see what we find.
Okay, awesome. Like the Russians are kind of being murderous terrorists with their drones, but you've seen like Ukrainians innovating. Can you talk about some of the innovations that maybe you've seen? I know we have to be careful because you've been right there in the thick of things.
Yeah, I can talk freely about all systems, all mechanical systems. I have to be careful sometimes with tactical training and how they do what they do. But I think it's important to point out that Russia is catching up. We've given them the time and space to learn. If we had done things differently in 2022, 2023, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in now in 2025. But where Russia is leading the way they lead the way sometimes, and then the Russianness of it takes over, and Ukraine quickly catches up and becomes the leader, like with fiber optic drones.
Right.
But for a while, everybody was thinking that the battlefield would be managed by AI, and so I thought, well, let's get into this. Let's find out if that's a real thing. And after 6 or 7 months of doing pretty hardcore research on what AI can do and can't do, what kind of processing you need on the edge to do certain things, it became pretty clear that whenever somebody says they've got a drone that does AI, it's mostly BS. It's
AI being pattern recognition.
Yeah, just because you've got pattern recognition and you're using parallel processing doesn't make your system AI.
Right.
There's lots of necessary but insufficient parts before something becomes AI. One of the things that's necessary is that you're using parallel processing, or to some extent on the edge. You're using that to get your inferences. That's the answer you pull out from AI is an inference. The other thing you have to have is you have to have data that is annotated, and you have to have models that train all of this information. Sometimes people are in the loop, sometimes they're not. And then you pull parts of that out, you stick it on the edge. They call it edge computing. That's the part that gets people, because you have to have like a Jetson Nano chip, and you have to have not just that, but you have to have enough of the model on the edge for it to pull inferences from to be useful. And you have to manage weight, and you have to manage power drains. You have to manage all of this stuff.
And then how would
it's
you
not
even
that it
train
can't be done. It can definitely be done right now. Right now, that is something that can be done in Ukraine and is being done in Ukraine. It just can't be done at scale.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting. AI is certainly there on the horizon as far as the intel world is concerned, and gathering data.
So here's where AI is great in your C4 ISR capabilities. In the rear where you're doing logistics, putting all of your data into an AI enabled system that helps you make better decisions in the rear. That's where AI really is already working now.
Right.
That is real. But for automated target recognition, when we keep hearing every week that somebody else says Russia's got a new drone that's able to autonomously target and switch between targets, and when it's over Ukraine, no.
And no. I think some of the mythology that you're talking about what AI can do, even drove. There was I didn't know I was going to get into this, but maybe I'm just extra mad about it. But because I'm an AWACS guy, and they we're phasing out the AWACS, understandably. It's a 50-year-old airplane, and we were going to replace it with the Australian Wedgetail. But recently, the Department of Defense and the powers that be canceled that program as well. And I think the reasoning being, we're going to go to drones that can do everything command and control wise just as good as a human. And no, the whole, pretty much if you're in that community, you're like, But
that's me reading Substack and LinkedIn on a daily basis. It's just shaking my head like this.
No, thank you. But and I'm sure there's fighter pilots too that are also. It's not just a matter of Maverick, saying, maybe you'll replace us someday, but not today. But for being targeted to something, they have a real argument there. So actually, I wanted to. So let's see if I can get my screen to do the right thing. I'm putting up. This website is called, if you're just listening instead of watching, understandingwar.org. It's an excellent website. It's run by former ambassadors, veterans, intel officers. They all know how to get to open sources. They all know how to make sure that the data is accurate. It's run by General Jack Keane as the U.S. Army retired as the chairman. And let's see, let me make sure what you're seeing. What you're seeing there is just a section on the mongoose drone. Is that one that you've heard about?
Maybe not by that name.
Okay, it's the drone where they oh, this is now in the wrong spot. Oh well, I messed up my spot because I was trying to show the coolness of this website. More about it, but there it's a drone. It's an air-to-air drone hunter that is meant to hunt down the Iranian drones. How do you say that
Yeah.
one?
Shaheed.
Shaheed. So little drone
Yeah.
trying to hunt big drone. I've
Sure.
seen I've seen some of your videos of the drone on drone dogfights, but this seemed new, that it was going to be a small drone specifically to hunt down the big drones, protect the
I've seen
cities.
several iterations of something like that. I just call them as a group interceptors. These are the drones that travel very, very fast. Well over 200 kilometers an hour. Most are over 300 kilometers an hour. And even at that speed, they have to worry about angle of attack. They can't overtake at that speed very well. Now, if they're used for ISR drones, that's completely different. But for Shaheeds that are not ISR drones, that are coming in as attack drones, they're moving faster and they're higher up.
Right.
All these small ISR drones have a sweet spot where they like to be, and they're all reachable by interceptors.
Okay, by an interceptor drone.
Yeah, those are the ones that take off extremely fast. There's also the ones we're seeing attached to motherships now, and that's great because that gives them added increases the ceiling level that they can go to and be effective. You hear a lot of people talk about, and there's another one called the Shaheed, like the Russian version of the Shaheed's called like the Kirin or something like that. One that's 100% Russian made. They say that this one's, they're traveling higher. They're using jet engines now. But they all have to come back down eventually. It's hard to attack a ground target without ever coming to the ground. So there's always a window to hit them.
What are the big drones? How much room do they need to launch from? Like, can you launch them from the middle of a forest, or like do you have to?
Do you mean the interceptors, or do you mean like the actual Shaheeds?
The Shaheeds.
The Shaheeds need a takeoff space. Yeah, they need a runway. So like the early versions from Iran had a rocket booster on them to get them going. And then I've seen catapults used as well. And obviously there was a propaganda video last week of them using Dodge pickup trucks to get them up to speed before the.
I didn't see that, but I've seen other videos of like, look how sneakily we can be with these, but and then of course the factories, which Ukraine has tried to target a few of those factories. That
was one of the biggest bonehead moves I think I've seen Russia do, is include that factory in the propaganda. That was an intelligence nightmare for them, but a boon for Ukraine. I don't think people understand how quickly and how easily pattern of life can be made on you. Intelligence organizations don't need a whole lot of info before they'll know everybody who works in that factory, all of them. And the information that's coming out of Russia is they're all young. So that means they all have social media. I would say, that propaganda video came out 2 weeks ago. I'd say within another 2 weeks, 30 days total, the HUR in Ukraine will know everybody who works there.
Stuff like that just recently compromised their new submarine intel as well.
Yeah.
So, I think people.
Well, here in the U.S., we're not immune to it either. We just had a young service member thinking he was giving Abrams tank intelligence to what he thought was Russian agents. He was radicalized online to believe the propaganda that Russia is a better country than Europe and the United States.
Yeah, so, and believe me, we're going to talk a little bit of propaganda soon. One of the things that I want to do with this podcast, and I'll start saying this every episode, but this is episode 2, is to find some point of propaganda and combat it, because the information warfare is real, and I like to say all the time that World War III has been raging for a long time, but it's been in the information space. So Ukraine, before we get to that part, Ukraine they've obviously had to learn to defend not only their military forces and their from drones, but as we've seen in the Kherson Kherson documentary. I'll say it right eventually. They've got to defend their civilians too, and a lot of they've lost some good fighter pilots, and had in fact one of the couple of them in my little intro video have they weren't shot down by any Russian or surface to air missiles. Some of the guys that have been lost, and one of the guys that had his face all bloody when he ejected and took a picture of it. They have it's dangerous going after drones with fighter planes, because you hope you can do it tactically correct and be somewhere above and behind the thing, and then be able to pull up high and right after you shoot. But a lot of times these guys are desperate to protect their cities and their civilians, so they get up right on the thing and go guns, and that has been fatal debris to a couple of them. And so how do we, what do you think would they really need to put up their best defense for civilians, and how could civilians protect themselves better with maybe some common equipment, that kind of thing?
Well, let's start with the civilians. So if you're my group, we do work in Kherson and Mykolaiv and Odessa. So when they're in Mykolaiv and Kherson, they're often close to the Dnepr. You know, they're close to the river, which means that they are close. They're within drone range of the Russians. And there's not much we can tell them, you know, because it's so random. But a couple of things that you can certainly do. It's just like in the wild. You don't want to stand out from the herd.
Right.
You know, you don't want to be the one car on a long road. You don't want to loiter by your car when you've got to your destination. You want to go ahead and get inside and do whatever you've got to do. That would be the advice that I give to them. You don't want to stand out is number one. Maybe taking a couple of extra turns here or there, you know, if you can, if that's something, you know, that's really not much advice at all for civilians. I wish there was something more they could do in terms of like the human safari. In terms of, you know, the nightly attacks that happen, I'm guilty of this as well. If I'm in Ukraine and I get an alarm during the day, it's probably a 10% chance I might go to a shelter. At night, there's probably a 90% chance I'm going to go to a shelter. So that's the thing that civilians can do, is not ignore the alarms. A buddy of mine sent me a video not long ago of a drone that hit outside of his courtyard, a significant distance away, and the pressure wave came through the portico into the courtyard, down the stairs into the bomb shelter. So it's, you know, you have to be very, very aware and careful. So that's civilian. I wish I had better information on civilians. You know, what each individual civilian can do. There's not a lot.
Right.
For what Ukraine can be doing better to shoot down the drones, they just need more additional interceptors, better seeker heads. You know, because right now a lot of it is still pilot driven. It's still first person view, even with the interceptors. You know,
right.
So that's not going to have the success rate you really want. You're going to burn through a lot of drones that way. I think a lot of people don't even know what the success rate is with drones on the battlefield. I mean, on a good day, you might get 20 or 30% success rate with your drone. Because of
that was one of the questions I was wondering about, is what are the logistics of this, and what are the risks to even the Russian units conducting the siege? Like if they can do this the kind of terror action and have no risk to their drone operators or to their units, you know, it seems like when you attack a military unit with a drone, that you're risking. You've got to have tactics at least in place to keep yourself hidden, so that it doesn't get traced back to you. Like Operation Spiderweb is a great example of great OPSEC and great, at least from what I know about it, and great you know, protection for the operator and everything. But what I figure you want to do is make it logistically something that is hard to continue, or at least risky for the Russian units to continue to do.
Well, if they're using RF, they're using radio frequencies that can be tracked and triangulated. But is that equipment available in the right place at the right time to do that? That's the question. Also, Ukrainian ISR can find the ground crews as well. I mean, just by observation, they can find them. There's you know, people fall into patterns. You fall into what works, as a drone team, you like going to this building in this basement, because you've had success there before. But eventually you get burned,
Right.
So, and that's, we talked about AI, where AI can be useful. That's where AI can be useful. If you've got a good C4 ISR system and you're getting data back from these crews that are running this ISR, and you're saying, okay, we've seen 3 crews in this basement in the past month. That's valuable data. That's where AI really becomes useful. Not necessarily an automated target recognition like we all want it to be for the sci-fi kid inside us, but for the boring back end of crunching the data and coming up with, a pattern that says, okay, these guys are here every Tuesday. Instead of they've been here 3 times, it turns into these guys are here every Tuesday.
Right.
Because this as well as I do. Just because you see the enemy doesn't mean you shoot the enemy. Sometimes you just want to watch the enemy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that gets into so there's 2 points I wanted to bring up there. And while you were saying all that, I kind of wanted to point out, I knew there wasn't really much they could do, but I'm glad the way you described it, because the documentary helps, but to really think about going about your day-to-day life and have to be worried about somebody dropping a grenade on you from somewhere is just not something that we can relate to. I think we've, as Americans, have felt plenty of empathy through all the different wars we've been in of civilians getting hurt, but we haven't. We're over here in our bubble of quasi invincibility. Except that's why September 11th was such a big deal and unified us, because now that ability for something dangerous to reach out and touch us became real. But I think understanding what needs to be done to end this conflict, you need to be able to put yourself in those shoes, because you'll realize that it is not something that is going to be made in a even if the guy was a really good businessman, you're not just convincing one person. This isn't a negotiation that can be achieved that way. And I think that gets me into the propaganda piece. Now there's 3 different types of propaganda that Russia tries to convince people of, both in Europe and the United States. And one of them, and they can be divided into subcategories, but one of them is that the existence of NATO and the threat of Ukraine joining NATO provoked Russia. The other one is that Ukraine is so corrupt, either with Nazis or some kind of oligarch type mafia, that it needs to be liberated. And the third one is to convince them that it's such a very complicated history that we don't understand here in the West, that Ukraine is sort of aggressively holding these poor people who just want to speak Russian hostage. And all 3 of them have a bunch of subcategories. But I think one of the ones that is easiest to crack for now is that there's Russia is such a huge country. Ukraine did great on its own for a while, but it's just going to be too overwhelming. What are your thoughts on who's winning the war?
Well, I'll list the winners for you.
Okay.
China's a winner.
Yeah.
Europe's a winner. The United States is a winner. India is a winner. And the losers are Russia and Ukraine.
Right. Well, that's yeah. I wonder if
neither of them. So Ukraine's both of them cannot afford to lose. But only Russia is in such a situation where they can't afford to quit either. Their economy is in such a state that it will not. It requires being on a war footing to exist at this moment. And so, with all this talk of talks that are going on in the next couple of weeks, the only way Putin is going to agree to end the war is if there's some sort of economic benefit for him. Because other than that, his economy is going to crash as soon as the situation it changes to where he's no longer. They ran through their budget for recruiting for all of 2025 in the first 6 months. So they've got serious economic problems. So they can't afford for the war to end, and they really can't afford for it to go on either. They're really backed into a corner. Ukraine's problem is demographics, of course. They are spending the future of Ukraine every day on the battlefield, and there's only so long that can go on. But
that is true.
How do we end this war, and how does Ukraine win? the war has to end to some capacity.
Mhm.
There has to be a ceasefire of some version, and then Ukraine arms itself to the teeth. It becomes a European Israel.
Mhm.
Um, as Palmer Luckey says, they have to become a porcupine. You don't want to touch them. It's too expensive and
Right.
too costly.
I like that analogy. Um, what did you mean by the U.S. The U.S. is a winner, meaning that we're just
We're just soaking
getting
up all the data coming out of Ukraine and becoming a better military and not expending a single trooper's life to do it.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Palantir is probably the biggest winner.
yeah, and it is. So I wonder about that. There's a cost for the U.S. and for Europe should Russia somehow win.
Mhm.
This is just from the website that I mentioned earlier, the
Mhm.
understandingwar.com. They have a lot of different graphics on their August 5th update. What you see there in the green circles is the hot zones where Russia has actually gained territory. And to summarize this report, from January to August, or January to July, excuse me, of 2025, Russia gained approximately enough territory. If you put it all together, it would be the size of Manhattan. So yeah, they're winning. They're gaining that much territory, and Ukraine's not gaining anything. So there, if you are a Russian bot, and I will know if I've made it, if I ever get any Russian bots on my channel, you can be happy that the estimate would say that at that rate of gain, Russia would win. They would be able to at least conquer the whole oblast of Donetsk in 2 years' time. Now, here's the caveat to all that. In that same amount of time, Russia has lost 252 full combat units. Now, to the varying degrees, a combat unit is about 2,000 people. So the reality is, if the caveat is, if Russia had limitless resources, yeah, they would end up winning. But the assessment is that there is no way they can sustain that rate of loss
Mhm.
and continue to push forward. Even if they do a whole new round of conscription and all of that, they're going to throw everything into it, and then when they say, eventually they're going to hope to try to take what land they got and abscond with it, but they can't achieve their objectives that they want to achieve are unachievable. Is what all these military experts have um, concluded. And I want to add something on top of that. Is I often wonder how many Americans know how the Allies really kind of won World War One. Are you familiar with that?
Only because I've read your comments on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it is. It's one of those stories that just comes down to a few people, really. Now, what the Allies did was, the U.S. did join the war, but Germany was kicking Russia's butt, and they were almost to Moscow, as you do when you almost are going to beat Russia, and then they do the scorched earth policy. But Germany didn't know at that time, because traditional warfare had been that, even without scorched earth policies and whatnot, when you conquered land, you got money, and the state of the land when you got any territory in World War One. It wasn't just a Russian thing that left the earth scorched. It was the nature of that entire war left the land useless. So Germany did not won all this territory and got no gain from it economically. And then, having gotten no economic gain, Britain put a huge blockade on them with the strongest navy in the world, and they kept the German navy pinned to their ports. Um, what's happening right now? The Russians have been driven from the Black Sea. They really have no naval presence anymore. They're trying to get it back, but we'll see how that goes. Um, the and then the U.S. joined the war, and they did a successful offensive, which, compared to other wars, was a measly little gain. But the main Russian general, Erich Ludendorff, had kind of a nervous breakdown. He panicked, and he told the Tsar and the nobles that, hey, that's it, we can't keep fighting. And the Tsar said, okay, I'll sue for peace. And the negotiations started, and a couple weeks later, the general thought, wait a minute, I'm silly. We can still fight. And he tried to go back and change his mind. And the Tsar was like, no. And so what they decided to do was the aristocracy said, okay, well, if we can break this blockade from the British Navy, maybe we can continue the war. And so they said, okay, sailors, get ready to go face the British Navy. And the German Navy, who had thought for 2 weeks that the war was over, went, excuse my language, fuck no. And they revolted.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, they got a little taste of life after war. They allowed themselves to think past, the war, and they're like, no, I'm not coming back on that. That imagining of my future was far too sweet.
Yeah, and of course, there's a big story of why all that leads into World War II. But what it comes down to is people lost their nerve, and honestly, no country could afford to continue that particular war. But and as you were saying, the biggest losers are Russia and Ukraine in this one, and that's because the same thing is happening to both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really who loses their nerve first, in my mind, and Ukraine's not going to lose their nerve.
No, there's zero chance of that. I'm in touch with people in Ukraine every single day, and they are tired and they are exhausted, but none of them have any inkling of giving up at all. It's not even in the math. It's not part of the formula. Whereas with Russia, it may not be their decision once the economy gets to a certain point. I mean, then Putin's only option is to turn it into a slave army where you are conscripted in and you have to go fight. But then, even then, the logistics of that. Let's say he brought in another million people to do what? With what?
Right. Motorcycles across the.
But where are they going to get the motorcycles?
Yeah.
If they could put more people on motorcycles right now, they would be doing it. If they could put more drones in the air right now, they would be doing it. Talk about propaganda. The idea that Russia is this massive military that is holding back is, excuse my language, horseshit.
Yeah.
It's they are doing everything they can. And then people say, well, they're not using nukes. No, they're not. And they never will. That is also propaganda. And the only thing that nukes are good for is propaganda.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that a nuclear weapon is good for. I did a piece on Substack a couple of days ago. The website you're talking about is the Institute for the Study of War, and the piece you just showed shows the eastern part of Ukraine. If you were to scroll back to where you could fit the entirety of Ukraine on the screen, you can barely see where Russia has any progress at all. Right. It's almost imperceptible when you pull the map back and look at all of Ukraine.
Right. And I think I can do that right here if we want to. Let's see. I add this and then.
And so if you dropped a tactical nuclear weapon, 15, 20 kilotons in Chasiv Yar, what have you done?
Yeah.
I mean, you've done nothing. You've absolutely done nothing to move the war forward. You've scared a lot of people in the U.S. and in Europe, but they're going to be more scared not to do something than to do something. Right. I mean, they're going to be scared into action if Putin were to do that.
Yes.
So there's no upside, and Putin is well aware of this. Everybody is well aware of this. This is well known. Mutually assured destruction works. It's worked all the way up to this point. It's going to continue to work. Just because people are self-interested. It works on a very basic psychological concept that you and I are self-interested.
Right.
So,
right. Self-interested in survival.
So here's the map. You see the first days of the war, all of this, with the exception of the Donbass region, is what Russia took in the first, and Crimea is what Russia took in the first days of the war. Since then, since Bakhmut, you can't see the progress on the map when it's pulled back that far.
That's better. So we have this little animation of the entire war after it only. So there's Ukraine's 2023 offensive.
Yep. That's giving up Kharkiv and Kherson. And then from here, you're not going to see much of any difference.
No.
You'll see little bulges here and there. You'll see something, you'll see Russia had a little offensive up near Belgorod. You'll see Ukraine go into Kursk, and that's it. If you from that perspective, you really understand how much progress Russia is making, and why Ukraine has become comfortable being on the defense. Now, Ukraine cannot continue to trade 3-1 or 5-1 with Russia. Ukraine has to figure out a way to trade 10-1 or 20-1. And if they can figure out a way to do that, then Russia would just kill itself. Well, it would bash itself to death.
You and I know how it would really happen, and that's because, true or false, has the United States really ever gone all in with the aid for this war?
No. There's one thing that nobody has tried, and that's let Ukraine win.
We've sold F-35s to all the other countries. Tanks are there, but they're hard to get there. But you don't really need them as far as. But the technology, the anti-drone technology, is there too. And I don't know if we would be able to make like we make some of our newest weapons. The Switchblade drone, for example, is and the Javelin, for example, which has a very modern update, and Ukraine got the most modern updates that we give to allies. It depends on the weapon, but the Switchblade is a good example of a type where we've got a version that is the best of its capability, and then we give the second best capability to our allies. There's drone warfare stuff and anti-drone warfare things. The shoulder-mounted countermeasures, the lasers. There's even an EMP machine that I showed the video of it last time, but it's an area burst EMP machine. Takes down swarms of radio type drones. I'm not sure about the fiber optic ones, but to go all in, I used to. It's kind of funny to debate the propaganda around how much it costs to send a garage sale to Ukraine so that they can win. But what I'm getting at is it's equipment that they need. When they asked to close the sky, there are several ways that you could do that without even provoking the propaganda of nuclear war. Command and control, being able to if they have surface-to-air missiles all around the border, then you can have NATO countries set up equal surface-to-air missiles around the border and not even go into the country. And you say, okay, Russia can close the sky on your end with your surface-to-air missiles, and NATO, we'll close the sky over Ukraine on our end with our long-range, Patriots, and we got them better than Patriots, but the better than the ones Ukraine gets. But anyway, I don't think we've ever seen what it really looks like to go all in just with the equipment. I'm not even talking about troops or
no. Ukraine doesn't need any troops. It just needs better equipment. And you called it a garage sale, and that's exactly what it is. It's sending it the 70s, 80s, and 90s equipment that we no longer use. A lot of it was for coin, counterinsurgency work. That's really not best suited for what Ukraine is doing. But that's good for the U.S. Because we're replacing it with the most modern equipment. If you could give Ukraine enough electronic warfare and enough Bradley fighting vehicles, they could put together an actual offensive.
Yes,
but we're not going to do that doctrinally because we're scared.
Enough naval equipment to conduct an amphibious landing, because in order to circumvent the trench warfare, the defenses that have been building. I'm looking at the situation and going, this would end very quickly with a proper amphibious operation taking Crimea, and moving from that. But
you're exactly right. And the Crimea's defenses are sparse. Russia does not have a lot of troops manning the beaches. That's just all there is to it. The problem would be the logistics of how to get, without Russia seeing, how to get amphibious assaults and the number that you would need to get it done, how to get that done, how to get those vehicles, where to put them. That would be a tough one. One of the things you would do is use dual purpose ships. Don't get the ship that looks like it's a military ship.
Yeah.
I mean, there are civilian versions of ships that are that can be beached. So
now you've got I wonder what if our corporations here are wondering what an amphibious operation looks like with drone warfare involved, maybe they ought to run the experiment. No, I'm just saying.
Well, they run it all the time in Taiwan. It's that's
true.
that experiment is done all the time, and it doesn't look good for China, but and it doesn't look good for Taiwan. That you want to talk about a conflict where there are no winners. People look in amazement at the length of the front in Ukraine. Well, buddy, look at the size of the front that would be, with China. It would be insane. So it's a tough one. But I don't think we're ever going to get there. I don't think we're going to have a president that changes the doctrine that says let's tempt Russia. Let's make them lose. That's what we should have done, and we could have done it easily in late 2022. But Mark Milley, Jake Sullivan, Joe Biden, a bunch of people got together and decided that was not the best case.
I mentioned to Zarina last week that the best opportunity I saw was when Prigozhin turned his forces around.
Mm-hmm.
That was the time to go all in. Because Prigozhin, more conceivably, if the U.S. is all in at that point, then other generals join Prigozhin. The Belarus offer doesn't slow him down. And you just, even if you just send NATO aircraft to close the sky at that point, Putin doesn't return to Moscow, in my opinion. But
it would start a Russian civil war, and for some reason that scares policymakers. But that's what's going to happen eventually anyway. That's all we're doing is staving off a Russian civil war that is eventually going to happen. I love Peter Zion, not because he's always right; he's almost never right, but because he's just so good at making points. And one of the points that he does get right is the demographic collapse of Russia. It's because it's math. You can argue with math if you want to, but you normally look foolish if you do. The math is not on Russia's side in terms of demographics. And they're just accelerating it when they are expending, over 1 million casualties in Ukraine. So when does it collapse? It's one of those things where nobody wants to be caught without a chair when the music stops. Not my administration. You'll let somebody else's administration. And that's the key advantage that dictators have over democracies, is that Putin's been in power for 20 years, and we rotate presidents every 8 years, and sometimes every 4, and then they come back for another 4. So I mean, it puts us there are advantages to that. Obviously, that is the best system of government, but there are disadvantages to it as well, and in that it's hard for us to plan long term.
It is. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, Ben.
Of course.
I learned a lot from you. I want to keep learning from you. I put your website up on the screen on the banner. Where else can people find you? You've got one of the
if your listeners are so inclined, a donation to giveuao.org. That's the charity that I work with. These guys do amazing work. They are in Kherson and Mykolaiv and Odessa, dodging the drones that we're talking about. They're the ones in the bunkers at night. Every night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, they all get up and go get into a bomb shelter. And in the morning, they get up and they go to work, and they help the people of Ukraine. And you can see the help by going to our Instagram, which is also at GiveUAO. You can see the work that we do.
Oops, giveuao.com.
Did I do that right? .org.
Okay. .org.
Yeah.
And .org, not.
We used to have .com as well, but I don't know if we still have it. It's a charity, so every $30 counts. $5 is somebody's medicine in Ukraine. So if you spend $30 on a domain we don't really use, that's 6 people who didn't get medicine.
Well, I'll definitely be contributing. I will bring that up. I want to remind everyone, if you're in Dallas, at the Dallas Public Library at 1 p.m., there is a screening of Kherson Human Safari, and I will be there to help pitch giveuao.org as well to people. So
that's great, because we do work in Kherson, and it drives me crazy. I prefer they not let me know because it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah. No, I imagine. I want to take a trip myself just to be there, but I think there are family members that would freak out if I did that without visiting them first. But if you're going, are you going back anytime soon?
I'm not exactly sure when. I'm in Arizona for another couple of weeks, and then back in South Carolina for a month or two. But then after that, I would like to go before it gets too cold. I was there last year in December, and I'd like to avoid that if possible.
Have you learned the language?
Unfortunately, I spent all my time in Odessa. So Yagabayu Paruski, очень чуть-чуть. Yeah, so I do understand a little Ukrainian. It's more similar to Russian than Portuguese is to Spanish, and so one day I hope to be completely fluent in Sergic. Sergic is what is like Portugal. That's the
okay, yeah,
mashed up language of Russian and Ukrainian is Sergic. I hope to be fluent in that.
All right,
that's the
awesome.
best case scenario for me.
Awesome. Well, I've got some language learning to do as well because I've studied languages before, but now there's another one on my list. But thanks, Ben. Let's do this again sometime soon, and we'll trade stories again.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one. I'm going to end the stream.